Good evening and welcome to the special edition of The Big Picture. The viewers of Rajya Sabha television will by now know that India and Pakistan have signed a historic agreement liberalizing visa norms between the two countries. The ministers from two countries have just finished giving that joint press conference where the new relaxed visa norms were spelled out. Before I introduce my panel tonight, let me just run you through the major changes that will come into effect from now on. The new pact, signed between External Affairs Minister S.M. Krishna and Pakistan Interior Minister Rahman Malik, replaces a 38-year-old restrictive visa agreement and will pave the way for time-bound visa approval and greater people-to-people contacts and boost trade as well. Under the new regime, one can visit 5 places instead of 3 at present, and those above 65 years of age, senior citizens and children below 12 years of age and eminent businessmen are exempted from police reporting. But this increased cooperation and bonhomie hasn't happened overnight. It started last year when track 2 diplomacy or back-channel diplomacy was in full swing. Then came Asif Ali Zardari, he came calling and we saw a round of Dargah diplomacy. The Pakistan president promised a forward-looking relationship and a desire to work towards greater cooperation between the two estranged neighbors. The visit by External Affairs Minister Krishna is also extremely important because it's not just the visa regime that is experiencing a change. People and officials on both sides see this as a wonderful opportunity for the two countries to come closer to each other and uncomfortable issues notwithstanding, create an atmosphere of trust and friendship, something that has eluded successive governments, leaders and the populations of both the countries for decades. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we look at the big picture when it comes to India-Pak relations post this treaty. And joining me in the studio will be Bharat Bhushan, senior journalist and political commentator. Alok Bansal also joins us. He's executive director of the National Maritime Foundation. Also with us is Secy Sharma, who's a former diplomat, as well as Leela Ponnappa, former deputy NSA or National Security Advisor, has also joined us for this program. I'd like to start the show, however, with Bharat Bhushan. Like always, this is definitely a feather in the cap of people who work towards it, be it track 2 diplomats, Minister Krishna, Hina Rabbani Khar, Rahman Malik, what have you, and doves on both sides as well. But again, the key word here that we keep hearing is guarded optimism. Guarded optimism has been the key word here. Before we get into the larger picture of the development, first thoughts on this landmark treaty of visa norms.
Well, I think it's been a long time in coming and it should have come much earlier. You cannot have normal trade if businessmen can't travel to the market where they want to sell their goods or where they want to invest. I think it is still a restrictive regime. Some businessmen will be allowed to go to 10 cities. Others with who are not that big will be allowed only 5 cities. I think it's ridiculous. I think all businessmen should be allowed to go all over India.
Level playing field for them.
No, they should go all over India. Their market could be in Chennai, their market could be in Trivandrum, it could even be in Kanpur, and it could even be in Moradabad. So let them go anywhere they want if they're coming as businessmen. And free or visa on arrival for people above 65 and children under 12, again I think it doesn't make much sense. People at that age probably don't want to travel alone in any case. They'll travel with people who have to get visas in advance. In fact, what you should have is for younger people till the age of 25 or 30, when they're in the formative years, when they're thinking about their neighbors, when textbooks are or existing ideologies impact their mind, that's the time they should be allowed to travel. Right. Allow young people to travel. So I think the visa regime is still restrictive, but it's better than what it was
before. Let's get the former diplomat in here. Before we go into the bigger picture of Indo-Pak relations, first thoughts like Bharat do you think it's also still very restrictive and like you said, ridiculous that some businessmen get to go to 5 places and some businessmen get to go to 10 places?
No, I think given we can't forget, much as the foreign minister said, let's not be burdened by the history. There are important security issues in both the countries. We have had situation where people have come for these cricket visas and have disappeared. So a step-by-step approach, cautious approach is a welcome thing given the kind of atmosphere that prevails in both the countries. It's a very good step forward. Let us see how it works. By and large, the commercial centers, 5 cities is a very good step. I mean, imagine what a change it is from the existing regime. And 5 cities cover a fair amount. Let us see it's working, how it goes, and we can move to the next stage if it works well.
Right. Very quickly, Leela Ponnappa, before I come to Alok Bansal, Leela Ponnappa, first thoughts on the bonhoming that we saw between Foreign Minister Krishna and Hina Rabbani Khan. They said a lot of things. We'll get to that in just a bit. But first thoughts on the relaxed visa norms that we're going to see in effect from now on.
Well, I think the visa agreement is a step forward. It widens a structure that had been put in place originally in 1974 on the basis of the Simla Agreement. So 38 years later, it's entirely appropriate that both sides have addressed it. But I would suggest that the visa agreement, while a good measure, as is the progress on trade, does not in any way sort of affect the larger picture. I mean, your program is called The Big Picture, and right. I do believe that there is a much larger picture to be seen, best typified by the total blanking out of Mumbai or terrorism in the Pakistan Foreign Minister's remarks.
Right, they did that. We'll discuss that in just a bit. I'll get the first reaction on the treaty from Captain Alok Bansal. Very briefly, sir, we have lots of things to discuss in a very limited time today.
As far as visas are concerned, I think it's a definitely positive move, and I think multi-city visa which is being talked of, we must remember that now it's for 1 year. I think the businessmen are getting visas for 1 year, and what Mr. Bhushan said, that should be up to 25 years. I don't think so there can be revolutionary changes. The changes will only come incremental, and we must understand that there are genuine security concerns, and probably 12 years is too less. Probably it could have been 16 years or 18 years. But I think the changes will come incremental. I think visa regime needs to be liberalized, because right. we just saw that a journalist accompanying foreign minister was not granted visa, and the newspaper was asked to actually change the journalist. Right. So still, despite this optimism, there are certain pitfalls which can come across, and the whole peace process can be derailed by just one roadblock.
Right. So you're saying, of course, positive step in the right direction, but of course with loopholes even now. Leela Ponnappa, let me come back to you, and let's actually discuss the press conference that the two foreign ministers gave. Hina Rabbani Khan, the Pakistani foreign minister, in her opening remarks at the press conference, mentioned that forward movement was systematic and gradual. She mentioned that the two foreign ministers met across capitals around the world, even in New Delhi in July, but with each meeting that they had, confidence grew that they could actually move forward and do something concrete. This treaty, this pact, doesn't it show that a methodic approach, a semblance of trust, the two countries can actually get things done? And isn't that a big leap forward in itself?
It's not a big leap. It's a calibrated step, and it's okay that these steps need to be taken. But she made no mention of terrorism. She ascribed Mumbai to the dustbin of history. Let us not neglect that either.
Right,
and
right.
I mean, there was no question of all of us being held hostage to history.
Right, right.
The current Pakistan High Commissioner, when he was the Foreign Secretary, talked about the evidence in the dossiers being literature. Now the Foreign Minister of Pakistan has said whatever happened in the past was history. Is Mumbai history? Is this something that Indians, the people who lost loved ones in Mumbai from many countries, is this something that we are or should be prepared to accept?
Right,
the analysis that I would put over here is that...
I'll just interrupt you there for 1 second.
Go ahead?
You raised a very important point, and I want to discuss that with Bharat Bhushan right now. Like Leela Ponnappa said right now, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan didn't mention terrorism or 2611. Our Foreign Minister did not, however, forget terrorism. Krishna, on the other hand, he didn't forget to mention the issue of terrorism, making it clear that India sees this as a must-do for if any forward relation is going to be substantial or sustainable. Terrorism was also on the agenda when Krishna crossed over to Pakistan, but every time we bring up the 2611, the strategy has been, be it Rahman Malik, be it Hina Rabbani Khan, they point to Samjhauta Express blast. Now, are we still on course for a stalemate when it comes to punishing the perpetrators of 2611?
Well, you know, I find it very odd that they bring up Samjhauta Express. Samjhauta Express was not a state-sponsored exercise, while 2611 is being linked to the Pakistani state. So I don't think there's a parallel there, and I think terrorism is very important, determinant of this relationship. Unless terrorism is removed from the picture, the relationship is never going to be normal, because one more blast, as people keep on saying, can ruin the relationship. However, it is history. You must learn from history, And learning from history, you must move on. So I believe that even Pakistanis have learned from that history, and they want to move on. It isn't as if they have consigned it to the dustbin of history. I think that's being unfair to people of Pakistan. You go to Pakistan, you'll find people are very upset over what happened in Mumbai. They're very upset with the kind of terrorism that is perpetrated on them and on other countries. They're very upset with their own institutions, which are involved in these activities. To say that Hina Rabbani Khar has consigned it to the dustbin of history. It sounds very nice polemically, but I don't think the people of Pakistan...
I want Leela Ponnappa to respond to that, but before I come to Leela Ponnappa on that particular issue, I want to get J.C. Sarma's comment on this. Do you agree with Leela Ponnappa right now, or do you agree with Bharat Bhushan that even though they did not mention Mumbai or the perpetrators of the justice system or the judicial system, it still is on Pakistan's mind and they would want to do something about it at any given point in time?
No, I think my colleague Leela is substantially right. She could have, at least in her statement, even given a general, formulation that Pakistan is committed to cooperate with India to bring the perpetrators of 26/11 to justice. We need to satisfy our legal system. At least she could have gone that far, which didn't happen. And I expected that should have happened. Having said that, this would not wash with the people here. We are a very vibrant democracy, and the kind of role that the media plays today, that Mumbai can be completely forgotten is not going to happen.
It's not possible.
It's just not possible, and they will have to appreciate. So it's a very welcome agreement that a step forward, calibrated step forward. But in the larger perspective, you have to see whether it is because of the circumstances of Pakistan today, where it is isolated, where its economy is in a state that they hardly have 2 weeks foreign exchange for import, and their benefactors have stopped giving them money.
Right.
Whether it is a tactical move to meet that situation,
or
there is a change of heart, it's a strategic
point taken, sir. Point taken. Before I go to Leela Ponnappa to ask her to respond to what Bharat Bhushan said, very brief comment from Alok Bhushans, who was shaking his head right now.
See, my point is that Mumbai is very important, there's no doubt about it, so is Kashmir. But these are two issues where I don't think so the two governments are going to budge from their stated positions. And any compromise on these issues under the media gaze is just not feasible. So to that extent, I think whatever breakthrough comes will probably not come under the arc lights and the cameras. It will come out slowly.
And behind closed doors.
Yeah, behind closed doors. So to expect something spectacular to have come out in a press conference would be, I think, so whatever is happening is, I think there are a lot of positive developments. Visa liberalization is a step forward on MFN, because during the press conference somebody said that MFN has been granted. But in Pakistan's case, we need to understand that a lot of time announcements have been made and they have backtracked. So till MFN provisions actually come into force and the trade starts flowing actually, the goods start moving, I think that will not be the case.
Fair point.
So we must go ahead on whatever is positive and just wait for the opportune movement for
fair point, sir. Captain Bansal, Leela Ponnappa, Bharat Bhushan says that saying that Pakistan or the Pakistan Foreign Office has kind of chucked Mumbai into the dustbin of history is very harsh. Your response?
Okay, I have 3 or 4 points and I hope you'll give me the time.
Briefly, ma'am, yes.
I think in these issues, a very cool and clinical assessment becomes necessary. Without wishing to make ourselves hostage to any one particular issue, I think we need to take a look at the progression of Pakistan's position with regard to Mumbai. First, of course, there was denial led by Rahman Malik as the Interior Minister then very grudging acceptance, then dossier on dossier of information and evidence, where they wanted to do a joint investigation when all the fingers pointed to the establishment of the Pakistan state and state actors in what happened. And this is the pattern where the whole thing has been dragged out legally. Now, how has Pakistan behaved in other cases? Where China has made demands, where even the Americans have made demands, when the Saudis have made demands, Pakistan has delivered on terrorists. But with India, the treatment is different. They have spun it out. I've said it in other places. Pakistan has been on a charm offensive ever since this foreign minister came to India last July. And I think Foreign Minister Krishna's list of all the positive developments is very good. I think to the extent that trade would expand, that in itself would be a great CBM. And this visa agreement will definitely help.
Right.
But what is the big picture? The big picture is that this is a relationship hopping on one leg. The security aspect has not been addressed. And when I made my statement with regard to Mumbai, it's interesting that typically what would be a media kind of statement is being criticized by my friend Bharat as being too harsh.
Well, it depends on what kind of media you represent, Leela Ponnappa. I'll have to stop you there.
Let me, yeah.
I'll have to stop you there.
I'm a former media. No. Please hear me out. When two foreign ministers speak with the kind of audience that they do, not to mention the issue of such deep concern, not just to India, but something that's consuming Pakistan itself, to my mind indicates an attitude that says, well, we cannot address this particular aspect. And this precisely is the contradiction within the structure of Pakistan.
Right, but point taken.
He has not been allowed this time to address terrorism.
Point taken, ma'am. I want to quickly come to Bharat Bhushan and ask him this. She mentioned that since the security aspect or Mumbai hasn't been really... I had one more observation during that speech. It was a fine speech by the Pakistan foreign minister. Precise, clear, forward-looking, very earnest. And unlike the past, there was no hesitation in mentioning Kashmir and mentioning Sir Creek. She mentioned it very earnestly and said the aspirations, went back to that phrase, the aspirations of the Kashmiri people must be taken into consideration. And that was the only time that I looked at the speech that she referred to a paper. The rest was all extempore. Does it indicate that the prickly issues are still going to be a problem, even though we can go forward on trade, we can go forward on visa regimes, but they will not budge on issues like, say, Sir Creek or Kashmir? Is that going to be a problem, come what may?
Well, I agree with Captain Bansal that there will be issues which will not be resolved in one meeting, and they will not be resolved in a press conference. However, I would not put Sir Creek and Kashmir on the same pedestal. Sir Creek is easily doable. As a Navy person, he'll tell you it can be signed tomorrow if the two countries agree. Kashmir is more tricky, and although I don't agree with Pakistan's claim, and I don't have to agree with the journalist, but you would agree that as and when there's a settlement of the Kashmir issue, you will have to take the Kashmiris into account and their wishes also into account. So you may have this bilateral dialogue, but you'll have to put a small table, a small chair for the Kashmiri representatives also to say, what do they have to say? So they will have a voice eventually in the solution. That is something that I support, that the Kashmiris must also have a say. Let these two countries come to some kind of a settlement bilaterally, but take the Kashmiris into confidence.
At this point, sir, we're also being joined by two special guests from Pakistan right now, Dr. Nazeer Hussain, Professor of International Relations, Qayd-e-Azam University, Islamabad, as well as Imtiaz, who is a political analyst there as well. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. We've been talking about the press conference, the visit by Foreign Minister Krishna, and the press conference by Ina Rabbani Khar as well. I want to get a sense from both of you gentlemen, briefly if I could, what the mood in Islamabad is right now. Guarded optimism has been a key word, at least from the Indian side right now. Thoughts from Pakistan, gentlemen?
Well, I think it's very customary on such occasions that the optics look very, very nice. The audio-visual, as we say, looks very nice, but the semantics, I think, for the semantics, we still have to go a long way, as Mr. Krishna, I think, spelled out that the path into the future, I think, will be difficult. But the vibes are positive. That he is taking back a very positive assessment to India, which could perhaps lay the foundation for Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's visit to Islamabad. But primarily, I think it's still very much guarded optimism, and we still probably, despite the rhetoric that we heard from both foreign ministers, remain hostage to the stated positions on the core issues that have been dogging the relationship between the two countries.
Right. Can I get the other reaction now, sir?
Yes, I can say the same thing. In fact, we cannot pass the 60 years or 30 years of hurdles in 1 or 2 meetings. It has to be a continuous process. The mood in Pakistan, and especially in Islamabad, is optimistic, but nonetheless there are hurdles. And one good thing which has happened since 1974, because that was the first visa regime, this is the second visa regime which has been negotiated and successfully signed by the two countries. It will facilitate the people, the businessmen, the media, and other people to come and go. And this is a very good omen that first time the Pakistani people are going to the Indian media. This is a good positive development, and same as has been stated by the Pakistani Foreign Minister, that we don't have to look forward, look back, we have to look forward. And I think this meeting between the two Foreign Ministers would pave the way for the forthcoming visit of Dr. Manmohan Singh to Pakistan. Pakistani people, Pakistani government, and Pakistani establishment is optimistic that by doing these things, other contentious issues like Sarkarik, Siachen and Kashmir would also be resolved.
Can I also get a brief reaction from the gentleman next to you as well? Imtiaz Gul, the feeling here, and our former deputy NSA, Leela Ponnappa, says that Hina Rabbani Khar's speech almost sent Mumbai 26/11 to the dustbin of history. Do you think that there was a concerted effort not to mention Mumbai in that speech, mention everything else? They mentioned Kashmir, but no mention of 26/11.
Well, I would hope that both countries have decided to move on despite the Indian insistence on taking the culprits and the masterminds behind the Mumbai attacks to justice. That's a very legitimate expectation and demand, and I would hope that the Pakistani government and the authorities would try their utmost to do whatever they can within the ambit of the Anglo-Saxon law that governs not only Pakistan but also India. And this law obviously has its own shortcomings. I think the authorities, the courts are constrained by the parameters that the Anglo-Saxon law lays out for dispensing justice in such cases. But I, as a member of civil society, would hope that both countries continue their dialogue, that they de-link the continuation of dialogue from the insistence on conclusive action against the perpetrators of the Mumbai attacks.
Right, Mr. Gul, stay with us. We'll come back to you in just a bit. I think Bharat Bhushan has a question for you. Before that, sir, I'd like to get very quick reactions from all three of you on what Mr. Gul and Mr. Nazeer just said. Do you think the mood in Pakistan reflects guarded optimism, something else, what have you?
No, it is guarded optimism. But I think they are being very realistic and presented it very correctly. As far as, I don't want to be bogged down in this discussion only on the Kashmir issue, but through track 2 during Musharraf time, a considerable ground was covered. And then the new government came and said, no, we don't know what happened. So the positions have been fairly well explained, and a reasonable kind of, understanding was arrived during that time. And our Prime Minister has made the position very clear that the boundaries cannot be redrawn. So whatever has to be done within this overall rubric.
Right. Can I get Captain Bansal before we carry on this one?
Yeah, see, I personally feel that the present government in Pakistan, headed by President Zardari, is, I think, by far the best government that we could hope for as far as peace with India is concerned.
And why is that?
Because I think President Zardari personally and genuinely believes that peace between India and Pakistan is good for the two nations. And I think issues like Kashmir or 26/11 will not be resolved in a hurry. I'm slightly disappointed that Sarkarik was not resolved. But I think the main thrust areas will have to be trade. And it is this area where there are serious bottlenecks within Pakistan, because despite government having announced MFN status, the FI Pakistan and certain sections of both judiciary as well as the army have been actually voicing concerns against, according to the status. There are sections of industry within Pakistan, especially the automobile industry, the engineering industry, which have serious apprehensions about opening their markets to Indian goods. And this is the field where we need to progress, because once the good atmosphere builds up, other contentious issues
could be resolved. Fair point. Before I let Bharat ask...
And I will just add quickly one thing. And the transit to Afghanistan.
And the transit of
because
Afghanistan, very important. So before I
thing.
let Bharat Bhushan ask his question, Leela Ponnappa, you heard the reactions
Pardon,
from
please?
Pakistan. A very brief reaction, ma'am, if you can. Very brief.
Okay, I'd like to try to spell out the big picture.
Right.
I think what has happened in terms of this visit has certainly denotes limited progress. My fellow panelists rightly pointed out the actual lack of progress on trade, and this indicates the ability of the civilian government in Pakistan to deliver. Pakistan committed to MFN treatment to India in 1974. The announcement currently was made in November of last year, and we are still awaiting the actual notification to let it happen. So I think there are issues over there. The other two other points of the large picture is an attempt on the side of the Pakistan establishment, particularly the army, to legitimize its occupation of Indian territory, to get us to negotiate on issues of withdrawal from our own territory, and Siachen is the case, and now to legitimize so-called normalcy despite the terror regime and infrastructure that continues to operate there. Finally, with regard to Afghanistan, today is the day also when the United States has declared the Haqqani network a foreign terrorist organization, and elements in Islamabad have said that this denotes that the US is not serious about peace. Namely, accept my terrorist group, then you get peace.
Right.
This is blackmail.
Right.
So
Right.
this,
Right.
to my
Leela,
mind, is the larger picture.
Right.
So
Right.
within the few positive steps now taken, let us not lose sight of the larger context.
Right. Before I sign off, I'll let Bharat Bhushan ask a very quick question to our guests in Pakistan. Sir, keep your answers brief if you can. We have to wrap up very soon.
So my question is to my old friend Imtiaz Gul. Hello, Imtiaz. My question really is, people here seem to think that Pakistanis are not upset with 26/11. My own impression from my visits is that ordinary Pakistanis are extremely upset with what happened in Mumbai. They condemn it. I think there are sections of the political establishment which condemn it, and they're very unhappy. They would be very unhappy if something like this were to happen again. Is this assessment correct?
Well, I guess so, Bharat. I think nobody can condone the killing of any innocent person, and I personally think, so will many others, that if any act of terrorism takes place against innocent people, the perpetrators must be taken to task, regardless whether they are Pakistanis or anybody else from any other nationality. So this is, I think, a very, very legitimate expectation and demand that anybody involved in terrorism, cross-border terrorism or internal terrorism, must be taken to task. And I don't think we really have to cling to the narratives that has been coming from both establishments in Pakistan as well as from within India, the one that we heard from the lady right now, without going into the merits or demerits of such narrative. I think we must all look forward to a smoothing of relationship between the two countries. The removal of the opposition to the most favored nation status by the Pakistan army, I think, is a major turning point in the Pakistan-India relationship. And I am just hoping that the thaw that we are witnessing right now could be a game changer in the bilateral relationship, and by implication, a game changer in the geopolitics of South Asia as well.
Right. Thank you so much for those comments. I think we are completely out of time. I guess the point is, like Leela Ponnappa said, the big picture, of course, also consists of security issues that haven't been addressed. Kashmir, of course, till Mumbai 26/11 is actually brought on the table. I think sustaining is going to be the trick. It's going to be very difficult to sustain this forward momentum. Would you agree very briefly?
No, I would not agree. I think that we can talk of the big picture, but we should also talk of the emerging picture. The emerging picture is what Imtiaz Gul said.
Right.
There is a lot of enthusiasm about trade. You create a peace constituency through trade, and other things will take care of themselves.
On that note, sir,
there is going to be election very soon in Pakistan in less than 6 months' time. And what view the new government will take and how far the army would allow this process to move forward, we really don't know. These are two absolute the uncertain areas.
Armies on board on trade. Armies on board on trade.
That before the new government comes,
it shouldn't have
we should
taken a year.
operationalize the MFN status and the trade should actually start moving so that it is not irreversible.
We have no more time, I am afraid. We'll have to wrap up the show right now. Like Bharat Bhushan says, the emerging picture is what we should look at on the big picture. I think that's the key takeaway from the big picture tonight. The emerging picture is what's important. Athar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you for watching The Big Picture.